this is Jacqueline from Project Most. Recently I put out a video of how to make egg geodes using a type of salt and growing the crystals inside eggshells. I let my crystals grow for about 8 days, and this video is a follow-up to that first video with some results and a new experiment. So I had originally showed you how to make the egg geodes out of eggshells and Epsom salt. And I've done this in the past, but I used kosher salt, which I didn't have on hand, so I thought I could use Epsom salt because we discussed the different types of salts that you could use to form the crystals. So you could use table salt, Epsom salt, you could use kosher salt. I'm going to be trying to use the pink Himalayan salt, and you can also use borax. Because of the crystal structure of each of these different materials, the resulting crystals look different. So I had done it with the kosher salt in the past, and it made big, beautiful crystals. And my most recent experiment, I used the Epsom salt, and I couldn't see the crystals until I actually dumped out the solution. So now I'm really curious, if I choose 4 different salts, what all the different crystals look like. So that's why this is a follow-up to the first video. So I'm using my eggshells. If you missed the first video, what I did was I used a spoon and I tap, 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 tap around the edges until I broke a little hole in it, and then I used my finger to make the hole a little bit bigger. Not too big, but you want it to be big enough so that you can see the inside as it's growing crystal. Now, I think one of the biggest differences that I used between the first lesson and today is that I use liquid watercolors as the coloring because I didn't have any food coloring, but today I have food coloring. So that's going to be my biggest switch in terms of basic materials. The other thing to remember if you're starting with fresh eggshells is once you break the hole and empty the egg out, you have to clean the membrane. So you put some hot water inside and you run your finger along the inside so that the little membrane peels off, so it's just clean shell. If you leave the membrane, it will affect the crystal growth and it might turn them a darker color. So I have a little holding thing for the crystals that I'll be growing. Today I'm going to try using table salt, Epsom salt, Himalaya pink salt, and borax. And we're still doing the 2-to-1 ratio of water to salt. So it's 2 parts water to 1 part salt. So originally I had done 1 cup of water to a half of a cup of Epsom salt because I did them all Epsom salt. Today, since I'm doing only a small amount of water for each different salt material, I am going to be doing a 3 tablespoons of water to 4.5 teaspoons of salt ratio, which is still the 2-to-1 ratio. So what I did was I used a measuring spoon and I figured out how much water fits into an eggshell, and it turns out to be 3 tablespoons. There are 3 teaspoons per tablespoon. So if 3 tablespoons of water fit into an egg, then half of that, well, then it would be 9 teaspoons. Half of 9 teaspoons is 4.5 teaspoons. So 3 tablespoons to 4.5 teaspoons if you're only making enough solution to fit into 1 eggshell. And again, if you missed the first video, this is a super saturated solution. So we're going to be using warm water that's not quite boiling, but it's really hot. So it spreads out the molecules of water so that we can fit as much salt in as we can. So it's super saturated. You can fit more salt into the warm water than you could if the water was cool or tepid or lukewarm. And my eggshells have some staining from the watercolor inside, but they're clean. I cleaned them out. So let's see. So I'm going to be doing the table salt first, the Epsom salt second, the Himalaya salt third, and the borax fourth. So I set my eggshells up. The egg carton makes a really nice holder so that they don't jostle, because once you mix your solution and you put it on the windowsill or someplace where it's going to evaporate, you don't want to disturb it because that will disrupt the crystal formation. Then I also have pre-measured the 4.5 teaspoons of table salt, and it's really interesting to see the different shapes of these types of salts. I have 4.5 teaspoons of the Epsom salt, and if you can see, these are kind of square or rectangular and much bigger pieces than the table salt. I have 4.5 teaspoons of the pink Himalayan salt, which is, we use it on our food, you can eat it. And I have 4.5 teaspoons of borax. This is the smallest particles. It's almost like a white powder. It's pretty opaque. This is the only one that you can't eat. The other three you can ingest, although because we're doing science, we won't be ingesting it. So now I'm going to get my warm water. And because it's a 2-to-1 ratio, we're going to be doing 3 tablespoons of salt. 3 tablespoons of water. And it might take a bit of stirring to get everything to dissolve. So I'm going to stir and then I'll be back. Hi, I'm back. And I mixed and mixed all my different salts with the 3 tablespoons of water. Now, it's a supersaturated solution, but it's also a roughly 2-to-1 ratio of water to salt. So I started with 2 parts water to 1 part salt, or 3 tablespoons water to 4.5 teaspoons of salt. However, I had a tough time dissolving some of them. The Epsom salts dissolved pretty nicely, but the borax really wouldn't dissolve. So it's, as long as it's super saturated, it should still work. So I added a little bit more water so I at least get most of the borax dissolved. So if you need to add a little bit of water, it's okay. Now I'm going to be doing 4 different colors. So I will be adding my food coloring directly to the eggshells and then pouring my solution in. So I'm going to do, for my table salt, I think I'm going to do some red. I'm just going to do 1 drop of food coloring. For my Epsom salt, I'm going to do blue. Alright, 1 drop there. For my pink Himalaya salt, I am going to do yellow. It'll be really interesting to see what this one turns out in terms of color, because the salt itself is pink, you can see in this dish here. And then finally, for the borax, I will do green. Alright, so 1 drop into each of the shells. And then, like I said, it's 3 tablespoons of the saturated or supersaturated solution per eggshell. So now I just ladle it in. I'm going to do my best to not get any of the remaining salt that's sitting on the bottom. 1, 2, I'm filling it most of the way to the top without overflowing it. 3. All right, and so I don't cross-contaminate with the different crystals, I will rinse this before I move on to the next one. That was the table salt. Next comes the Epsom salt. 1, 2, 3. Okay, rinse this. Move that out of the way. Bring this a little bit closer. Next comes the pink Himalaya salt. Look how pink that is to start. It's pretty dark. 1, and there's actually, it's interesting, there's little tiny particles, I guess, that are naturally occurring in the salt. I'd be curious to see if that affects crystal growth. 3, almost to the tippy top. And then finally, my borax. And once again, this borax is the only thing in this experiment that we're using that you can't ingest. So make sure you clean up your workstation well if you're working someplace where food will be prepared afterwards, like I'm on my kitchen counter. All right, spilled a little bit, but that's okay. All right, so I don't need to mix since the food coloring has already mixed into the solution as I poured it in. So now I'm going to set this on a windowsill right by the sunlight to help increase the evaporation rate, and I will be taking pictures over the next couple of days. I made myself some little slips for each photograph. So I'll be taking pictures over the next couple days to document the crystal growth. If you do this experiment, I would love to see how your crystals come out. Please take pictures and post them on our Facebook page in the comment section. If you make a little video of the crystal growth over several days, you can post that too. And if you have a hard time posting any of it, send it to us. My email is jacqueline@projectmost.org, and I will help you get it posted. All right, good luck and have fun.